And we have seen that from a vast majority of member states, there hasn't been any reaction saying this is too much. On the contrary, some of them have told us we need more because we still have EU-funded projects to pay for.
Who wants more then?
Well, you have countries like, first of all, Central and Eastern Europe. We're still talking about 12, 15 of those countries that are in the process of really starting the infrastructure from scratch after half a century almost of communism. And then you have another group of countries of which we hear virtually every day: Greece, Spain, Italy, Portugal. Those countries have already paid for EU-funded projects, and now they expect the EU to pay back, which is rightly enough. And by not increasing the budget, we would make things worse for them, for their treasury.
This is an important point, Dan Hannan, that the debate sometimes is cast as if it is the Commission wanting to spend lots more money and national governments struggling hard to keep austerity and being asked to put more in the pot, and that really isn't how it is.
Well, I mean, of course, there are some countries that are getting net contributions out of the EU. I'm bound to say it doesn't seem to be doing them much good. I mean, if subsidies from Brussels were the way to prosperity, Greece would now be the wealthiest country in Europe. It's precisely because of this increasing dependence on external subventions that they've lost competitiveness and productivity. But I think that in every country there is a sense that individuals and businesses are having to make cutbacks. You know, in Britain, my constituents, you know, in every family, they're saying, do we need a second car? Can we find a cheaper mobile phone provider and so on? When they then read that, you know, our net contribution to the Brussels budget in 2010 went up by 74%, when they see these billions being handed over, when we're making very difficult cuts at home, and this isn't just Britain, all 27 member states are struggling to make domestic cuts and are seeing every euro they save squandered by these constantly rising Brussels budgets, I think there is a sense that it's unreasonable and unfair for the EU to preach austerity to the member states while not applying it to itself.
And that's the public perception, isn't it? You would have thought that the clear lack of appetite for austerity, which exists in most member states, nobody wants to be suffering in this way, might translate itself into the idea of a sort of growth budget from Brussels. It doesn't, though. What it looks like to lots of people is a kind of hypocrisy, actually, asking us all to save, but then suggesting more money for the EU budget. That's what Dan's saying, essentially.
But that's not the case. If you look at the conclusions of all the recent European councils, the heads of states and government from 27 countries keep on telling us austerity alone will not get us out of the crisis. We need a blend of austerity and investment for growth, for job-friendly growth. And the difference with the EU budget is that about 80% of the EU budget is what I would call compulsory expenses. You know, in a sort of don't shoot the messenger case, that if there are direct payments to farmers, it's because member states agreed there would be. The Commission cannot change that rule. It's like the policeman having to enforce the rule but not making it. If we receive like 40 billion euros worth of bills from member states, incidentally, when you say it makes no good, I would like to just tell you that about 40% of all public investment in Central and Eastern Europe depends on EU funds, and for Greece, Spain, Italy and Portugal,
why not go all the way and make it 100%? They'd be the richest countries in the world.
So I think that the problem we have here is, if you, in simple terms, the monthly bill for the credit card has arrived. It's too late to whinge about it. It means that money has been engaged. Now, we have a duty as the Commission to get from member states' estimates themselves how much they will need next year for their projects. And we have to trust them and say, well, we just add up, it's a mechanical exercise, and you find it's 7%. But believe me, it's not something you do with a smile, thinking, let's do 7%. We were aware of it beforehand, saying, there is a crisis, and we asked for 7% increase. But you think, it's very difficult to find out of 85% of compulsory expenses, savings, because we haven't got the right to change the rules for this. It's not the role of the annual budget.
Let me suggest a couple of low-hanging ones that you could do, Patrizio. The House of European History at £130 million. Why is the European Union running museums? You and your fellow communications officers, £80 million per year. The EU's general publicity and advertising budget, bigger than Coca-Cola's. You know, even if we accept that, you know, the EU is spending its money wisely and well, I have to stand back and question the premise here. which is that you're investing for growth. By definition, any euro that you are investing, you've had to take from somewhere else. You've transferred it from the private sector into the public sector. This isn't money that's coming from another planet. So what we're really doing when we talk about the EU investing for growth, when we talk about the EU spending more, is tax bills going up, either immediately or in a deferred way through borrowing, so that we expand the bureaucracy of the EU and the surrounding bureaucracies that administer its programmes. Now, that's very good news if you are working in the bureaucracy, but I'm afraid that the record to date, if you look at what's happening around Europe, suggests that it is not very good in terms of bolstering growth in the recipient countries.
There are 2 points there to try and pick up on. I mean, first of all, this issue about saving. I mean, your point and that of the Commissioner has been we have to pay bills that member states committed us to. OK, I think you accept that, don't you, Dan, that there are bills that need to be paid. But the point is, why can't you find savings elsewhere in order to pay those bills? And if you look at the budget, there are increases in areas that perhaps those that Dan's mentioned, but also, for example, administration, there's a 3.2% increase in that. Why are you increasing this area? There's only one real cut in the whole of the budget, and that's in citizenship. So why aren't you finding the savings? And then we'll get on to that issue about whether you're really investing in growth.
We've made an effort to find savings, really. Commissioner Lewandowski himself, with his history of fighting communism, centralization, bureaucracy in Poland for most of his life, is probably the last person on earth who would like to go, just let's expand bureaucracy. But again, it's very easy to criticize. When you start scratching on the surface, as we have to do, then you find the reasons. We have made savings. For instance, we have asked every service of the Commission to check all the programs, all the projects are running, and say if any of those projects is not performing without good justification, we're going to cut. And we've done that for hundreds of millions of euros when you add up every little bits here. We have...
but you've still got an increasing budget. You've cut,
yes,
but the budget's
because, as I said,
increasing.
if 85% of the budget has to increase, not through our fault, then to find savings in the remaining 15% to counterbalance is mathematically impossible, really.
But that's begging the question.
Unless you just stop the administration.
You say the rest of it sort of has to increase as though this is some law of nature, something over which you have no control. If you look at these non-discretionary parts, agriculture, foreign aid and so on, they, of all the bits of the budget, are the most obviously and palpably failing in terms of boosting growth. European agriculture, whatever it is not the motor of the European economy. And I would argue that the reason for that is precisely because it's become dependent on government handouts rather than on innovation, just like anything else. The same of the social and regional programs and so on. So it's actually, this money is not useless, it's worse than useless. If a country starts to arrange its affairs around the receipt of subventions from outside, then the best and brightest graduates every year start drifting into jobs in the Commission or in the national bureaucracy instead of making things or selling things or working in the private sector. That's the tragedy of the countries like Greece, which have become so dependent on EU handouts. That's why they're in the mess they're in. That's why they've been overtaken by a number of the new democracies.
I hear you, Dan, but I think again that you're shooting at the messenger. The point of the annual budget is not to change the rules. I think this is a debate about the annual budget. And this is democracy, I'm really happy to discuss about handouts to farmers or not, but in a debate about the annual budget, it's actually, I think, pretty unfair to introduce elements that need unanimity by 27 member states to change the rules. We as a Commission, we cannot change the rules. If member states agree that farmers should actually receive subsidies, which, by the way, means that member states don't have to pay them, if you want. If member states agree at unanimity that we're going to create an external action service, and let me remind you that they went even one step further, they said, and the cost of this external service should be compensated by savings at home. Now, I don't think they make their savings, but really, it's not for the Commission to change the rules.
The Commission was not neutral in these things, Patrizio. You were arguing, I mean, not you personally, the Commission was arguing for all of these expansions of EU jurisdiction. So you can't now turn around and say we're being just told what to do. I mean, the Commission
doesn't decide. But this has been called, I mean, we quoted, President Barroso talking about this being a budget for growth.
Absolutely.
Mr. Lewandowski talking about this as an anti-crisis package. Others talking about we need more Europe. We've heard all this. So this is accompanied by a definite sort of ideological underpinning.
You can have opinions,
it isn't just sort of doing what you're told to do.
You can have opinions.
So can you argue? I mean, can you counter that point?
The Commission Commission is a civil service. We can propose, definitely. Yes, and we argued in favour of an external action service, and we also argued in favour of an external action service whose cost would be actually offset by savings in member states. But who, in the end, agrees? You, Dan, as an MEP, the British government. We can only propose, as any civil service in the world, we have our opinions. Of course, we fight for an idea of Europe. We think that, and facts often back us up, that €1 spent at EU level, in many cases, can bring savings of 14, 15 euros.
Oh, come on.
Absolutely, Dan. I mean, we have facts about this.
Right.
We have the facts in science and research.
Every study of this shows that the closer you get to the people on the ground, the smaller the unit, the more efficient the spending is. Local councils are more efficient than regional, regional than national, national than European, and for very obvious reasons.
I don't think it works. It's as simple. I'm sure in certain cases it is. I've worked for local and regional authorities in Europe for many, many years, and I really know what you mean about this in some cases, but it can never be.
But this is
100%.
such a wonderfully self-serving argument, that, and it's one. I mean, I realise you're quoting José Manuel Barroso and others that a euro spent at European level goes further. I mean, can you not see what an incredibly convenient that argument is from his point of view? The more you give us, the better off you are.
But what's his advantage in it? What's in it for him? It doesn't change anything.
This is about member states demanding spending on their pet projects and not on others.
A single thing that is backed by EU money that could not be more efficiently done at national level. What's happening is that we're circulating gazillions of pounds, 19 billion, something like that in 2011. 3 times what we've saved in all our domestic spending cuts put together, through the leaky chambers and tubes of the Brussels machinery, dribbling out all the way, and then a little bit of it comes back, and we're supposed to be grateful for it, which is crazy. Let me suggest the following little thought experiment. What if I and Patrizio and all of these institutions cease to exist tomorrow? Right? What if the whole of the Commission, Parliament, and the rest of the EU's agencies weren't there? How many people would really notice? Other than the armies of contractors and consultants who have learned how to get a very handy living out of it, who would really feel a deleterious impact on their quality of life?
Probably a few hundreds of millions of people in Central and Eastern Europe. First, because they depend on us to have their roads and railway upgraded after 40 years. They haven't got their money. As I said, they rely on you, Britain, France,
you
Germany.
conceded earlier.
So finish. Let him finish. Yeah.
It's good when we can just talk to each other without interrupting each other. Secondly, probably you would find that the safety of our food, air transport, maritime transport would go down, because for the moment we have rules for 27 countries. It's the same rule. No one can access our national waters as European or British or whatever without respecting some of the rules. You take this away, you would find that one country one day will just sort of be a bit more lenient in terms of safety and all that. And I think you'll find, I can go on like that, scientists. You have scientists in many universities across Europe collaborating through EU funds against research against cancer, tuberculosis and others. Of course, Dan, sorry, but it's better to build one bridge with 27 people chipping in it than everybody building their own little bridge.
It's not better to build one bridge directed by the European Commission. If that were better, then the Soviet Union would have won the Cold War and we'd be talking in Russian now. The idea that collaboration cannot happen unless you are in charge of it is the root of the whole European heresy.
Who's in charge?
Countries will come together, institutions will come together, universities, in your example, will come together and collaborate as they have been doing for
we've got to wind it up, but
without needing the European Commission to tell them what to do.
Do you not accept, though, Dan, I mean, this is not a case, actually, and since the Lisbon Treaty, which I know you oppose, even more not the case, that the Commission dictates the budget. This is decided by you, your colleagues here at the European Parliament, and by the Council of Ministers in the end, isn't it?
Certainly, the MEPs have a say, and obviously I'm in the minority here because the European Parliament tends to draw on self-selecting Euro integrationists who are the people who put themselves up for election in the first place. But if you were to have a referendum in almost any member country at the moment and say, do you think the European budget should be bigger or smaller, I'd be pretty confident of the result.
And just briefly, Patrizio.
Yeah, of course, if you have a referendum asking people, should you pay more or less on anything, everybody will say no on your fees for your gym club, of course. But once you know what it does, what it can do, I think then people can change their mind.
Well, there is your job for the next few months and a message that no doubt you'll be pushing hard to spin. Thanks very much, both of you. And that's all from